Hi, how you doing? And welcome back to a video on the channel. What we have for you today is our wildcard video going into game week 3. You've had twice as much information than you did this time last week, so you might be considering wildcarding a bit more seriously, or at least making a few transfers to your team. Maybe your team have got some injuries, maybe they're not playing as much as you'd have hoped, or maybe they're just playing and they're doing pretty bad. So whether you're making transfers or full wildcard, hopefully this video will help you out with your team. We'll just say as a main bit of advice, just be careful of chasing points that have already happened. For me, a great case would be Stupinan from Brighton. He's got a goal and 2 assists so far, but how likely is he to continue assisting in every game, say? What would you be expecting of by getting him into your team? Because Brighton haven't kept any clean sheets so far this season, and the next 7 games are West Ham, Newcastle, Man United, Villa, Liverpool, and Man City. So really, it's about forgetting the points that have gone in terms of your expectations. Of course, you need to pay attention to form, but don't let that be the be all and end all. It's about predicting where the points are going to come from in the future, and that mixes form with fixtures and just looking at the data and your general hunch of what might you think might happen. So let's get into the team, and we're going to start in goal. And I've gone with Onana. Clean sheets are all over the place at the moment, and there's a large amounts of extra time. Probably aren't helping because it means more late goals, or at least more time for goals. Therefore, I'd just go with the cheapest player from a decent, in inverted commas, team. So sure, Man United look a little bit shaky, but they do play Forest, Burnley, Palace, and Sheffield United in the next 7, which means they've got as good a chance of keeping clean sheets as anyone else, really. I've gone with Areola as well. When Man United play Arsenal in game week 4, West Ham play Luton, so you could just rotate them with each other. In defence, I've gone with Gusto, Saliba, and Van de Ven. So for me, I'm sticking with Saliba. Arsenal play tomorrow night, so barring any injury or red card, he's their most reliable starting defender. Arsenal can't afford to lose any ground on Man City, so they need to be on it, and they have good fixtures as well. So for me, I would get a Arsenal defender in at the very least. For Gusto, I think 4 million represents really low risk. So sure, you can look at Chelsea conceding 3 against West Ham today, but you're getting him in at minimum price. So compare him against the other 4 million defenders, and for me, he wins hands down. Then you combine it against Chelsea's fixtures, which look pretty good, and I think you're onto a winner. Whilst we're talking about certain risks, why not consider a Spurs defender? So I know, it's a Spurs defender, but a 4.5 mil, and with Bournemouth, Burnley, and Sheffield United in the next 3, I think there's huge upside here. I've gone for Van de Ven, but you could take your pick between him and Romero. On the defence, I've gone with Kabore and Henry on the bench. For me, Kabore is someone that you're not going to play all the time, but Luton do have Fulham, Wolves, and Everton from game week 5 onwards. So although you won't start him, if your team suffers from any rotation risk or injuries after the deadline, then at least you have a chance with him. He's definitely going to play, and Luton probably will pick up points at sometime during the season. Plus, your third bench option should always be 4 million. I think, in my opinion, there's no point wasting the money there. And then with Rico Henry, I think you've got a good defender that's a reasonable price for a good team with good fixtures that you could rotate in and out as the season goes on. In midfield, I've gone with Saka, Foden, Buemo, Madison, and Rashford. For me, Saka is a set and forget in your team. Just get him in, and unless he picks up an injury or something against Crystal Palace tomorrow night. Get him in your team, just and enjoy the points that he's going to get you. I think when we look at Foden, I think he did fantastic against Newcastle. He was a real sort of focal point of the team, and he did get 3 bonus points as well, which just shows how involved he was with all the attacking play. At 7.5 million, I think he also represents great value. Now De Bruyne is out, especially. He's someone that if he can play a bit more centrally as well and start linking up the play, he's someone that's going to be really good for your team. He could have actually had a couple of goals, or at least another goal and an assist on Saturday night. So I think that you could be looking at a real monster haul of points there from Foden. So he shouldn't be someone that's overlooked. I've also gone with Mbuemo. I know he's had 3 goals in 2 games, and we have to be careful again. It's a bit like what we're saying with Estupinan about chasing points because 2 of those goals were penalties. So are Brentford going to get penalties every game? Probably not. But then you also get him in because he is on penalties. So, once he's taken penalties and scored them, you can't then complain and say, oh, there were only penalties because, that was part of the reason you got him in. So it's about just getting a balanced viewpoint, I think, for me, but he's definitely worth it with Brentford's fixtures coming up. I've also gone with Maddison. So although he didn't get any attacking returns against Man United, I do think he's someone that, can link up the play. And I think if you were looking at a striker that was missing a few chances, you'd maybe look at it in the sense of, well, at least he's getting in the positions to score, and even though he's missed the chances, eventually those chances will come. And I think that's a bit like Madison as well. On the eye test, he's playing really well. So although he didn't get any assists, I think the points are still there. And Spurs fixtures, like we said with Van der Ven, are looking pretty good in the immediate future. I've also stuck with Rashford here. I think once Hoyland comes back from injury and Rashford goes back to the left wing, I think it's like looking at a new player there because he just plays differently when he's out wide. He's a bit more direct and he can play to his strengths a bit more. So I would really sort of start judging Rashford from when that happens, which is hopefully going to be this game week. Up front, I've gone with Haaland and Alvarez. So Alvarez for me at 6.5 million. I think if you were looking at a Man City midfielder that was playing as much as Alvarez was, and he was 6.5 million, I think you'd back their hand off to say, yeah, let's get him in. But just because he's a striker, don't think that he's competing with Haaland for minutes. They very often play at the same time, or at least, if Alvarez comes on, it won't be for Haaland. So I think those two as an attacking force are pretty good. I think it also avoids the whole Man City which defender to get in and the rotation that you've got there. I think having them up front kind of just, you can cover that a bit better as well with I've gone with Nicholas Jackson from Chelsea. So I think you've got to be aware that he's quite highly owned and his price might drop if people panic sell. But surely Chelsea can score goals against Luton, Forest, Bournemouth, Fulham, and Burnley, who they've got in 5 of the next 6 games. There's also nobody else up front for Chelsea. He is the striker. So you'd like to think if Chelsea score, he'll be involved in it. I think also Fernandez missed a pen today for Chelsea, so Nicholas Jackson could now be on penalties. And it's like kind of what we said with Alvarez or Haaland. If one of them doesn't play, like Man City didn't make any subs this game week, Jackson is a good rotation player as well, but you think you'd be starting him against that Luton team. So the team rating on Fantasy Football Hub, shout out to them with their team rating section of their website, was 95%, and the team value is 97.8%. So for me to get a 95 rated team with that amount of money is fantastic, and it shows that there is really good value out there. You don't have to be going for the high rated players all the time. The strengths, I think, are flexibility with transfers. Having about 2 million in the bank really just shows that you can upgrade to almost not anybody, but there is a lot of flexibility in your team. If there's a player that you think is going to do well in the future, or if there's a player that you think you want out of your team, you can upgrade to 2 million either way, which gives you such a huge range of options. I think there's also good upcoming fixtures as well. So a lot of these players, you get them in on a wild card and you'd like to have the good form, which some of them do, but you also want to play the fixtures as well. You're not getting in players that have really difficult fixtures coming up. The weaknesses for me, I think we're gambling on form a little bit. I'd say players like Jackson, Rashford, maybe you're unsure about whether Foden and Alvarez are going to play every week. I think, you're kind of predicting a little bit on how good they're going to do, and you've not quite seen it yet for some of them. But I think if you're wildcarding in game week 3, you're probably willing to take a couple of risks. And I think also just a bit of advice as well is you've got to let go of the price rises. So, for instance, let's take a look at Saka and you'd say, "Oh, I was going to get him in. If only he was 8.5 million still, I've missed out on him being 8.5 million." If you were going to get him in at 8.5 million, or you thought he was, you should still get him in at 8.6 million, really. The price difference is so small, and you've got to kind of just bite the bullet a little bit and not feel like Fantasy League have beaten you because they've upgraded the price before you had a chance to get him in. If they're a good player at 8.5 million, they're a good player at 8.6 million. So that's the team. Let us know what you think. Hopefully, it's given you some insight. Are there any players that I've missed? Are you thinking of wildcarding in this game week? If you are, let me know. It'd be interesting to see if you're having an overhaul of your team. Thank you very much for listening. Please do like and subscribe. It means a lot, especially on a small channel. I will see you in the next one.